sunrise, when the sun rises. Excellent.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
I'll say it again. The first time that you're allowed to say the Amidah of the Shacharit service, that's the silent Shmona Esrei, is at the moment of sunrise. So that's why it's there every day. The earliest you can daven Shacharit is at 6, what time? 6:39 today, or 6:38 according to your calendar. Maybe in Chevron it's a little bit different. Sunrise 6:30. That's not when you can begin the Shacharit service. Because what do you begin with? As Josh said, you start with Birkot HaShachar, and then what do you say after that? After Birkot HaShachar, Birkat HaTorah, and then what do you say after that? Morning blessing. And what do you say after that? Psukei de Zimra. What do you say after that? Shema, Kriyat Shema, the blessings of Shema. And then finally, you get to Amidah. So you have to time yourself so that you get to the Amidah by what time? 6:39. That's what's called, when you try to time it, that the Amidah is exactly at sunrise, it's called Vatikin. Vatikin, the pious elders. They would try to do that. It's the first possible moment that you're allowed to pray the daily prayers, the morning prayers. Shachar, Shacharit, means morning. It's not morning until the sun rises for the issue of Shacharit. In many communities, they have to fudge on this halacha. Yeah. Because it's called, they have a minyan of po'alim. What are po'alim? Po'alim, workers, they gotta be at work to punch the clock exactly at, let's say, 8 o'clock. If they daven at 6:39, they only finish the Amidah, they only finish at 7, and then their travel takes an hour and a half till they get to work. They'll be late for work. And so in many places, people have to start work earlier, and so they have to daven earlier. It's a special leniency for those who have to get up early. Where I live, the standard shul, the usual shul that I go to, that I used to go to, there's not too many workers, but what there is a lot of old men. And the old men get up early. Can't sleep as long when you're older, sometimes. So they always have Tfilat Shacharit at what time? 6 a.m. 6. Rain or shine, summer or winter. I yell at them and I say, you can't daven Shacharit until sunrise, 6:39. You can start at 6:15, 6:20. You'll get to the Amidah by 6:39. But if you start at 6, they're usually done. The Amidah by 6:20, 6:30. That's even before the sun came up. How can you finish your Shacharit? So I stopped davening there.
It's against the rules.
It's against the rules. That's right.
Definitely not good.
The problem is there's a rabbi there.
So
He condones it. And you know what his precedent is? This idea of called minyan po'alim. A minyan of workers. The workers who have to, they're allowed to have a leniency here. So he uses that, even though none of them are working. They just get up early. But listen, they're not working maybe punching the clock, but everybody has something to do. They got to go to do their workout. They got to go to eat their breakfast. They got to get to the rest of their life. Whatever they need to do, they feel that it would be wasteful for them to push it off. And so they daven early. A lot of shuls, they daven before the zricha. Zricha. There's another name for zricha. What's it called?
Allah.
No, no, no,
Skia?
no. Shkia is the sunset.
Ah.
Zricha is another name for Zricha. It's called
First light.
Nates. Heard that word? Nates. Netz hachama. It means the first sparkling of the sun. Netz is a sparkle or flower, flowering of the sun. Netz hachama is the same time as zricha, what it says on your calendars. Some calendars it doesn't say zricha, it says netz. And that is important. Why? Because you got to know that's the earliest you can daven the Amidah. All right, unless you have some special leniency and you need to get somewhere in a rush. Say you're going on a flight or something. You can, if necessary, daven beforehand for a certain amount of time. How long? There is the period before, and it's called. There's a few times, even before the sun rises. It's called dawn. Amud HaShachar, that's what Eitan was saying, Amud HaShachar. But that's before the actual sunrise. And that's kosher, it's good enough for Shema. It's good enough for Tefillin, not good enough for Amidah. Okay, so for the Amidah, you should really wait until Nate. That's why it's in the calendar, the Jewish calendar. Every single day it tells you what's the time for Netachama or Zricha or sunrise. Time yourself. If you're really, really pious, what's the first thing you should do in your day?
Nitilat en moderne.
True. But the first significant thing you do in your day, when the sun rises. First thing you do, when day becomes day, you pray to God. Pray to God. That's the Tfilat Vatikin. They try to time it, that the first thing they do, as soon as the sun rises, there's a pasuk, I think it's in Kohelet. It says, Yira'ucha im shamesh. They will see you or fear you as with the sun, together with the sun. The sun rises, they're right away praying to you. So first thing you do when you wake up is to pray to God. It's true, we do Nitilat Yadayim, we say Modani, we say all the lead-ups towards the Tefillah. But essentially, Tefillah is the first thing you got to do. Is pay your respects to Hashem and pray for your life. Gives us life. Okay? Got that, so enjoy your calendars. And question.
Can you repeat the name for the time for the workers? What Pauline?
Minyan
Minyan
Poalim. Minyan Poalim.
And what's the reason for the early Kabbalah Shabbat? I remember some shuls have very early Kabbalah Shabbat.
Right, so we spoke about that. When does Shabbat really start, that you're not allowed to do any more work? At what time? Shkia, very good. That's at sunset, Shkia. And the custom is, we push it up and we light the candles 20 minutes earlier, 40 minutes earlier, depending on the custom of the community. That's the time of Hadlakat Nerot before sunset. Just to be machmir, to add on some time from the weekday onto the Shabbat. Two reasons why we push it up. We try to start Shabbat a little bit early. You don't want to play with fire, literally. You don't want to be lighting your candles too late. You'll be violating the Shabbat. Right? If you light candles 1 minute, what a big mitzvah. 1 minute later, what a big aveira. Right? If you light the candles after the sunset, you could be violated Shabbat. You light it beforehand, you're honoring the Shabbat, how wonderful. Sometimes it's like you get on the bus and they close the doors. If you miss that bus, got to wait another hour for that bus, right? If you were just 10 seconds earlier, you would have been inside the bus and you would have been on time and you would have been warm or whatever it is you need to get to. There is a cutoff time. That cutoff time is sunset. You light the candles 1 minute before sunset, you're at tzaddik. You light the candles 1 minute after sunset, you're a rasha. What's a rasha? Rasha, evil. Tzaddik, righteous. So the clock can be very cruel sometimes. You got to be careful with your timing. When you go to the army, you learn that kind of thing. Eitan, you're going to have a watch, and they're going to teach you that if you're 1 second late, you can be punished. You're going to have to run around the block. Or worse.
Worse than that.
You imagine?
Crawling on the block.
Yeah, 10 times. You could even be late and for something, and they'll say you have to stay in the base for the entire Shabbat next week. You won't get to go home. That's like the worst punishment in the Israeli army, anyways.
Yeah.
Time is very important for any army.
Yes.
Are we in the army now?
Yes.
What army are we in?
Army of Hashem.
The army of Hashem. Sivas Hashem. We're in the army of Hashem. You all have to learn discipline. My whip is over here. I'm trying to whip you into shape here to teach you how to be halachic Jews. It's like a regimen. You've got to live your life by the calendar and the clock. There's a time for certain mitzvot. Now, some people really take it to the extreme and they're nervous all day long. The sun is going to set. Oh no, I have to daven mincha. Some people chill. They daven mincha, they give themselves enough time. But in the back of their mind, they know they have to be done by sunset. Right? And some people, when I daven in the early minyan, there's one guy who goes outside to see the sunrise. And he won't start his Amidah of the morning till he sees the sun go up. Very regimented, very clear. The rules of the Torah are very precise. And we try to live like soldiers, but we have to not be neurotic about it, right? Don't go crazy on me. But the consciousness of knowing these times, that's why in all these Jewish calendars I just gave you, I gave you one in the past, even, yeah. And Eitan has one from the past, but I got more now. Every day, they put in the calendar, today's sunrise is 6:39, tomorrow's 6:40. And then it's going to change and go back, stay 6:40 for about a week and a half, then it's going to go back 6:39, 6:38, 6:37. Every day it changes a little bit, and it's just so you can be precise. They give you the exact time of Zricha and the precise time of Shkia. Other questions about that? About the timing? Yeah.
Yes, but you need the time also to know until when you can say Shema and Amidah, right?
Very good. There's more rules. Not only the beginning time of Shacharit, but the end time of Shacharit. When's the latest time you can say Shacharit?
4 hours now.
Very good. Where did you learn that?
This class.
In this class. Oh. I don't know if Aaron learned it in this class. The very first section of the Talmud. It's called the Mishnah, the Brachot. Talks about that. You can pray the morning prayer from when the sun rises until 4 hours into the day. So if the sun rises at what time? 6:39. So you have till 7:39, till 8:39, till 9:39, until 10:39. However, because the days are so short, the hours we actually speak about are relative hours. So you take the daytime hours and divide them by 12. So each hour is less than 60 minutes. So it's actually closer to 10:29, not 10:39. So bottom line is by 10:30 you have to daven Shacharit. Here too, there's room for a little bit of fudging. What did I say before? That people play with the beginning time of Shacharit and they daven early if they have to. Minyan po'alim. Also, if you're late. Most poskim say you can daven Shacharit even after 10:30. All the way up until midday, Chatzot. Does it say what time is Chatzot on your calendar? I don't know. Does it say it there? Is there anywhere that it says Chatzot? No. All right.
But you didn't fulfill the mitzvah then.
You fulfilled a mitzvah, maybe not in the best way. Maybe not in the best way. Praying in its proper time, you have not fulfilled. But to pray every day, you have to pray. If you get up late, you get up at 10:30, you get up at 11, you still got to pray Shacharit. That's the most poskim understand that way. Until midday. Once you hit midday, it's already time for mincha. So maybe you'll daven mincha twice. But you can't daven Shacharit in the afternoon. Shachar means morning. Shacharit is the morning prayer. So it's got to be at least morning. The most you can push it is until midday, when the sun is up in the middle of the day. Right, that's 6 hours after sunrise, right? Till
Does that fulfill the obligation of the Shema?
So the Shema has different rules. It's very interesting. The Shema is not precisely dependent on when the sun comes up and goes down. The Shema, what does the Torah say? When should you say Shema? When you walk. It's a pasuk in the Torah, right? When you sit in your house. When you walk on your way. When you lie down and when you get up. So it's not dependent on what time the sun rises. It depends on what time you rise. Or we're not going to make it dependent on you. We have to have a system that works for everybody. So we say, what time is the time for normal people to get up? And what's the normal time that people lie down? So the time for getting up, for sure in the ancient world, and we were talking about how even today, a lot of people get up early. They get up even before the sun rises. You can say Shema before the sun rises. According to some people, you must say the Shema before the sun rises. In any case, Shema you can start even before sunrise. It's about an hour, about 45 minutes before the sun rises, as soon as there's any noticeable light. The latest time for Shema, now here it's complicated. When do the laziest people wake up?
11 o'clock, 10 o'clock.
11 o'clock, 10 o'clock. So the sages made a decision, and they said 3 hours after sunrise. I think you're right. Nowadays, there are a lot of people that got up even after 3 hours after sunrise. Because what? There's 6:39, so 7:39, 8:39, 9:39. You have to say Shema before 9:30, approximately. Because that's the end of when people normally get up. So for Tefillah, you have till 4 hours, or Chatzot. And for Shema, you have only till 3 hours after sunrise. Maybe they will change that when they have a Sanhedrin. If we have a consensual court of all the greatest rabbis come together, maybe they'll say, nowadays people sleep in longer than the ancient times, even after 3 hours. So maybe you'll be able to say Shema till 4 in the afternoon. Who knows?
I don't think it's longer, it's later. People go to bed late and wake up late.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, there's...
It's true. So they wake up late. So if they wake up late, then they can still say Shema late. But officially, the time is set at 3 hours. The latest time for Shema is 3 hours after sunrise. Okay? But that would never happen to you. Yeah.
I have a question, right?
Yeah.
How about women? Women, they are not bound by the time. Let's say they wake up early, but they didn't say the prayer. And by the time they finish everything, maybe it's by 10 o'clock. So it's after the time of Shema. So can they still fulfill the obligation? Or?
Right. So it's interesting. See, Shema is verses from the Torah. You can say verses from the Torah anytime you want. You're studying Torah. And so even if it's after 10:30, you can say the Shema. You're not necessarily fulfilling your obligation of doing it in its proper time, but you can say Shema at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Say the Shema whenever you want to accept upon yourself the yoke of heaven, the kingdom of heaven. So, for davening, Shacharit, it has to still be within the times we mentioned. Up until Chatzot is the latest time you can daven Shacharit. And since they're not obligated to keeping to those times, then there's more flexibility there. But in terms of prayer, actually, some people say that women have to pray twice a day. Most poskim say they should pray Shacharit and Mincha. My wife, Baruch Hashem, she prays Shacharit and Mincha. At one point, she even prayed 3 prayers a day. My wife's mother, she prays 3 prayers a day.
Evening Shema.
The whole Mariv, not just the Shema. Mariv, she davens Mariv, 3 Amida. When I say pray, I mean the Amida. The entire tefillah, just like men do. So it's not forbidden for women. Some people say women should, if they don't have babies to take care of, if they're not overwhelmed with their schedule. Why not? It's a good thing to pray to Hashem. But in terms of obligation, there's a debate amongst the rabbis how much women are obligated. It's a very interesting system how it works with men and women. We'll talk about it sometime in greater detail. But, yeah.
Why the women's section is called Ezrat Nashim? It's like the help of women?
No, Ezras, no. It goes back to the temple. In the temple, there was courtyards, different sections of the temple. And each section, each courtyard, was called an Azara.
Okay.
It's just the name. The name of the courtyard is Azara. When you put it together with another noun in Smichut, it becomes Ezrat, Ezras. So there was an Ezrat Israel. There was a courtyard designed for the Israelites, as opposed to Ezrat Kohanim, meaning that it's an Azara, it's a courtyard designed only for that's where the Kohanim hang out.
The word means the courtyard.
Courtyard, that's what it means. So Ezrat Nashim has nothing to do with helping women. It means it's the courtyard for where the women stand. Ezrat Nashim, the courtyard. Azara just means a courtyard or section of the synagogue which is designated for women. It's a good question. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Let's go ahead. Let's open up our books about Hilchot Shabbat. Yeah. Question? The laws of Shabbat. Josh. Look alive. Look alive. Yesterday we did one of the most complicated chapters, the laws of cooking. But now you've got it all figured out. You know how to avoid cooking, you know how to avoid even heating things up in the prohibited way, rabbinically. And most importantly, you know how to have hot food on Shabbat. Yes?
I have a question about cooking.
Unless you cooked it before.
You have to have cooked it before, exactly. And you got to keep it hot. You got to keep it hot. We talked about how, yeah.
Like, I'm not Jewish, not Jewish yet.
Yet.
Yes, but if I want to invite friends, they are Jewish. How are you? Like, we did it a few times. We asked people not now how that they can cook or light a fire, but how you can do it like on the right way of like how you can do it.
In terms of Shabbat, you're asking, or in general? In terms of
Shabbat, but also general.
So in general, there's a few issues. There's the issues of kosher and not kosher. I think that's what you're asking about more than the laws of Shabbat.
Yeah.
Is that so? The laws of kosher, it's very interesting. Many people, when I grew up in Canada, people have no idea what kosher means, like non-Jews. What do everybody think? What does it mean that something has to be made kosher? What are they?
Ingredients. Maybe kosher ingredients.
ingredients. Most people don't even know about that. What do you think they think it means?
Proper slaughtering.
Proper slaughtering. That's also a very high level of knowledge.
Meat and milk.
Meat and milk, people, that's also very high level of knowledge.
No pork.
No pork. A lot of people think, okay, no pork, but then it's kosher. Okay, what else? One other thing that people think.
The fish.
No seafood.
No.
The
Shrimp, lobsters.
the spoons and the forks. You need to
Oh,
separate.
nobody knows about that. Separate forks and knives.
Separate
Most
pans.
people, I think if you did a survey, they think what it means to make something kosher, it has to be blessed by a rabbi.
Yeah.
Yeah? You heard that? Yeah.
It's true.
That's it. People think it has to be blessed by a rabbi.
It depends which the country is.
Everywhere, and the rabbi has to come and bless it. I think they learn it from their religions. The other religions has to have a blessing of the rabbi. But we're laughing, of course, because we learned so much already about kosher. We know that it has nothing to do with the blessing of a rabbi. You don't need a rabbi to keep kosher. You don't even have to be Jewish to keep kosher. There's an objective set of rules. There's foods which are by the Torah defined as non-kosher. You said seafood, for example, without scales and fins. There's animals which are kosher food, objectively, whether they ever saw a rabbi or not. Whether you're Jewish or not. Obviously, for Jews, I'm talking about. The laws apply to Jews. Jews are only allowed to eat kosher food. What does it mean, kosher food? Well, there's a system of rules that have to be kept. You mentioned mixing of kosher meat and milk. Fine. So if you don't mix them, if the meat is kosher and you don't put in any other ingredients and you keep all the rules of kosher, even if you're not Jewish, the food is going to be kosher for a Jew. You understand what I'm saying? You don't have to be Jewish to make kosher food.
But it has to be a Jew that boil the water or start the fire.
Ah, good point. This is a rabbinic institution. Basically, what you have to also figure out is that you have to be able to believe, to know that all this is true. Because when you get a hamburger, you don't know where the meat comes from. Could be horse meat. Could be that they threw in some milk into the ingredients in your hamburger. Right? You don't know. So you have to be able to rely on the person who's feeding you the food. So that could be tricky. In general, we rely on Jews because they know what kosher is, and the Jews, no Jew is going to willingly make his fellow Jew sin. And so if you go to someone's house and he says, this is kosher, and you say, oh, okay, thank you, I'll have a bite. I'm giving you kosher food. But if you go to a non-Jewish house and he gives you food, and he says, no, don't worry, it's kosher. Can you rely on what he says? I don't know, right? Yeah. So that's where you get into supervision. It doesn't have to be blessed by a rabbi. It doesn't even have to be supervised by a rabbi, but you have to be able to know that it's reliable when the non-Jew says it's kosher. So maybe that's one issue where, I guess the people in your community know that your family knows the laws of kosher already and they can rely on you. Maybe I don't know exactly how they work that out, but that's the biggest issue. See?
Kosala drinks.
You could have cold things which, don't require any cooking, and there's ingredients are clear on the package, and many products you buy in Israel have kosher supervision already.
Is there any difference between kashrut and kosher?
No difference. Yeah. One other thing is what Aaron mentioned is that there's an extra stringency that the rabbis have that not only can you not necessarily believe that the non-Jew knows what he's saying when he tells you it's kosher, also if he cooks the food, there's a stringency that certain types of food, we're not supposed to eat the food if it was cooked only by a non-Jew. Bishul akum, it's called cooking by, really in the day there were pagans. pagans, and they would obviously cook non-kosher food, but also there was the danger that if you ate, even let's say you're saying you know all the ingredients are kosher, you can see the oil he used, and you can see the vegetables that he puts into his stir fry. We'll talk Chinese here. And you can see the rice. There's nothing wrong with rice. What could be wrong with rice? And so he stirs up some stir fry with rice and vegetables. And the oil, you see, he uses vegetable oils, no problem. And so what could be the problem? Your neighbor, your Chinese neighbor, invites you for some, what's it called, dim sum? No.
Why not?
Dim sum is mostly made from pork.
Mainly pork. Okay, not pork. Okay, no. But just some stir fry.
The shrimps, of course.
Oh, yeah, okay, no, okay, none of that. But he invites you over for some stir fry with some vegetables. Why can you not eat? There's nothing not kosher in there. You see it all. You don't have to rely on what he says. You see that it's all kosher ingredients. And he cooked it up. He lit the fire. What's wrong with that? He stirred it. The rabbis were worried that once you start eating with the non-Jews, that's the beginning of assimilation, intermarriage, assimilation. And so there's a rabbinic stricture that says if there's food which is cooked by non-Jews, only by non-Jews without any Jewish participation, you can't eat it. So that's easy to get around as well. You can have a Jew light the fire. There's different interpretations, but we'll learn about the laws of kashrut another time. But that's true. That's another issue. So in terms of kashrut, and you're hosting other families in the yishuv, I don't know, you have to ask them what the rabbis told you and what they told them, and there's a few issues that they have to overcome. Maybe someone comes over on Friday, I don't know, and lights the fire for you, I don't know. Right, so I don't know.
Yeah, we do like this. The neighbor comes, he lights the fire, he puts a pen on the...
Oh, look at that.
Wow.
See that? You do that. I didn't even know.
So there is some participation of
There's some participation of a Jew, right? And obviously they trust you, that you're in the process of conversion, so obviously you're not going to be looking to and you know, they obviously when they come over they can see what the ingredients are and so forth. So we can avoid any biblical prohibitions of non-kosher food, of course. You know where to shop and to buy only kosher ingredients, meat and fish and chicken, and also in terms of the rabbinic strictures. Sounds like they got a system there. You come over, you light the fire, somebody comes over ahead of time. Yafet? Good. Very soon you'll be finished, no?
I hope so.
I hope so too. Yeah.
Yes.
Meaning you'll be finished the process, but you'll be starting.
Yes.
You'll be starting life as a full-fledged Jew, B'ezrat Hashem. Good. So we have to be careful, but there's ways around it. When there's a will, there's a way. When there's a goodwill and people like you and you like them and they want to be friendly with you, there's no prohibition of being friendly. With the pagans, I wouldn't be friendly. I don't want you to intermarry with the non-Jews. But if you're in a process of conversion, there's room to find all the leniencies we can. Okay?
Rabbi,
Yeah.
Let's say Jews travel to another country. That country there's no kosher, so he is not allowed to go to the, let's say, vegetarian restaurant.
Correct. There's room to be lenient in certain circumstances. For example, in some circumstances, there's room to be lenient if you can make sure that all the rules are being kept. For example, the most common thing you do is you go to the fish shop and you buy a fish that has fins and scales. You can see them. And you put it in aluminum foil, cover it up, double. You can put it in any oven, even a non-kosher oven, and they can cook the fish there. You have to have your own dishes and your own, you could use, disposables if you have. But there are ways to cook in a non-kosher environment. But you're limited. You're very limited, yeah. There's a lot of details of how to keep kosher in a non-kosher environment. I was in Africa for a week. No kosher. I eat granola bars. I ate bars, granola. I brought with me in my suitcase. Every day I had 2 or 3 granola bars. I bought an apple. I had an apple, whatever. Dates? Dates are yummy. Whatever there are things you can manage without having cooked food. They offered me. They were very nice. I wasn't sure that I was gonna. Also because of the, you have to take shots. There's all sorts of diseases microbes for the stomach that you're not used to in a different part of the world. So I didn't drink the water. I didn't eat the food. So for 1 week you can manage, but.
You can drink Coca-Cola now.
Really? Okay. But that's poison.
How about vegan restaurants, for example, in India, in some Buddhist countries?
Right. So restaurants, it gets much more complicated because you really have to know what goes in there and what goes on there in the kitchen the whole day. And you don't know because it could be, okay, your dish, it has only vegetables, but the same pan, they made up shrimps for the guy in the next restaurant. So if it's vegan, you're saying the whole restaurant, what oil do they use? So a friend of mine who was in India for many, many months and years, when my daughter was traveling, she asked him for advice about kosher. Because a lot of Israelis travel to India to travel. It's very cheap there, apparently, and it's interesting, and it's a whole different world. Israelis like to get out and see different things. So he took her aside and he said, do you want to know the truth, or do you want to just be an Israeli? A lot of Israelis, they don't really care that much. He told her the inside story. And he said because many Israelis go and they say, oh, it's a vegetarian restaurant in India. They don't eat meat, right? It's against the religion to eat meat. So it's all vegetarians. They say, oh, everything's kosher. He said to her, I don't know, if you don't want to hear it, you can close your ears, but this is apparently the best well-kept secret of India, is that not everybody is so religious. The vegetarian restaurants, sure, they're vegetarian. It says on their sign, only vegetables. If you go there at 10 at night, there's a private party. The same dishes, the same pots, and they're serving meat, and they're serving non-kosher food. And you can't rely on the fact that it says, oh, this store is vegetarian. Who knows if they keep to their own, the fact that it says it, they wrote it on a piece of paper because they know that the customers will come. But it's hard to rely on that. But I'm not an expert in India. There are rabbis who are more well-versed and they've been to India. I personally have never been. But I'm just telling you what happened with my daughter when she went and the advice she got. But some people say, listen, I'll bring my own pot. And I'll ask them to cook up some rice. No oil, no additions. Bag of rice, a pot of water, no problem. And that's fine. That's fine. You can do that anywhere in the world. If you bring your own pot, you're not relying on you don't have to depend on what they had beforehand. So you can manage. You can manage, cook by yourself. You can even buy a little camping stove, camping gas, range. But sometimes it's harder to keep kosher. Sometimes it's easier. When you go where there's a Jewish community, usually there's a restaurant. And when you travel, even in Africa, I went to the supermarket. In one place, there was actually a supermarket in the capital city, in Entebbe. No, this was a different city. What was the city? No, that's in Kenya. in Uganda, the city we flew out of. Where's the big airport in Uganda?
Yeah.
It's not.
People.
There is one in Entebbe, but there's maybe in Entebbe. Anyways, the supermarket there, I walked around. A lot of products had an OU on it. The products from America, so you can get kosher food everywhere in the world. I don't know, in China you'd see too much OU. I don't think so.
Maybe in Beijing, Shanghai, there are
Maybe. Oh, there they have communities. They have a Chabad house will give you cooked food, right? You can rely on the Chabad to give you kosher food. So, but otherwise, anyways, let's talk about Shabbat. Okay? Chapter 11. Chapter 11, that's page 205. Okay, so Eitan, will you read for us, please?
Yes. Number 1.
Yeah.
4 melachot relate to borer. There are 4 melachot that deal with separating ochel, food, from psolet, waste. Dash, threshing, zorer, winnowing, borer, separating, and meraket, sifting.
Okay, so what is he talking about? 4 melachot. What does he mean?
4 things.
4 out of how many?
39.
4 out of 39. Melachot mean categories of work. And they all are doing pretty much the same thing. What's the thing? Separating. This is part of the agricultural process. You grow some wheat. You have to separate the wheat from the chaff, from the stones, from the thicker parts. And there's 4 different ways in which we do it. And that's why there's 4 types of separating. What's that called in general? Borer. That's the name of the chapter. Chapter 11 is called Borer. Separating is a problem on Shabbat. It's really strange when you think about it. What kind of work is associated with? So building, I understand. That's called work. Creative work. But separating good from the bad, when he says ochel, food, from psolet, waste, it doesn't even have to be food. Anytime you have a mixture and you separate the good stuff from the bad stuff, we call it ochel from psolet, food from the waste, even if it's not food. But in here, in the agricultural process, there's a lot of separating. Some people want to call it selecting. So you have to have, the basic concept is that when you've got a jumble of something, strings, and you cannot just pull out, or if you've got, let me give you another example. You've got, do you ever have in your home a bowl of fruit? Oranges?
Yes.
Sounds nice, right? You have memories, Josh? Is that what you're, yeah.
You guys enjoy a nice orange, am I right, guys?
Wouldn't that be nice? Sometimes you get blood oranges, right? Red oranges. You seen those? They're yummy too. It's just oranges, but they're red inside instead of orange. It's very interesting. No, an orange. There's also grapefruit. But anyways, sometimes the oranges, in America, I hear that people don't eat so much fruit. It's not so tasty, but sometimes it is. So anyways, the fruit can stay in the bowl for a week. What happens? One of the fruits gets rotten, right? On the outside of the orange, instead of being orange, color does it change? Some green mold grows, right? So what's going to happen if you leave it there? What's going to happen if you leave it in the basket with all the other fruits? The other fruits will pick up the mold from the one fruit that went bad, and then all your fruits will be bad. So what do you want to do? What's the first thing you do when you see a moldy fruit in your fruit basket?
Separate.
You throw it away. You take it out and you throw it away. Not on Shabbat. On Shabbat, to pull out the bad fruit from the good, that's exactly what they did in the process of baking bread, the process of the agricultural. They take away the chaff so that you're left with the kernels, and then you get rid of the stones so that you can grind up the kernels into flour. There's a lot of separating there, separating out the bad stuff. Can't do that on Shabbat. What do you do with your fruit bowl? On Shabbat morning, you see, I see one of the oranges went bad. It's got mold on it. What do you do?
Take away the good one.
One idea is wait until Motzei Shabbat. What can you do? You're not allowed to separate on Shabbat. You know that in a few hours you will be. But what about you're worried that in the meantime the other fruits are going to get mold on them? Is there a way around it?
Take all the food and eat it.
What's the other way? Take the food and eat it. Good, I like it. What do you say? What? Think, what's the way around it? Come on, the rabbis have got to figure out a way to do the separating, but not in a prohibited way. Good, you guys are thinking smart. That's right. There's 3 rules for what constitutes forbidden separating. Borer. Usually, rule number 1. Separating that's forbidden is when you take out the bad from the good. Like I said, you take out the rotten fruit. And then the mixture remains great stuff, delicious fruits. That's number 1, what makes it forbidden. Number 2, in the agricultural process, usually the way it was done is how do you get the rocks or the bad parts of the flour out? You use a sifter, a sieve, right? A grate. And so you shake it a little bit, you put everything in. The good stuff, the thin grains of flour will go through the sifter, and the stones will stay up on top, and you'll be able to throw them out. So using a sifter, that's the original way that the separating was done. So that's a condition number 2. Don't use a sifter. Don't use a vessel, a tool. Number 3 quality of the forbidden separating was that separating was done as part, as we said, part of preparing the flour, for preparing the bread, for preparing the dough. It was a long process. When you separated today, probably you separate lots of flour together from the stones, and then tomorrow or the next week, you'll make dough and you'll bake the bread. The flour can stay there for a long time. Maybe not too long, you don't want bugs to get in it, but it's not a process which is for immediate use. The selecting, the borer, which is forbidden, is borer because you want the mixture to be separate, not for immediate use, for long-term use. So now, if you avoid all these 3 conditions, you find a way to save your fruit in your fruit bowl. What are the 3 conditions? Let's review them again. Number 1, what did we say? Right, bad from the good is prohibited, good from the bad is okay. Good. So all you have to do is maybe not take out the rotten one, but take out the good ones. Secondly, usually separating is only prohibited if it's for long term, for a long time away from now. But if you take the fruits, okay, the good ones, because you want to eat them, because you want to use them right now, so then that's category number 3. What was category number 2? Using your hand versus a tool. You're not going to put your fruit in any kind of a sifter or vessel. You're going to use your hand.
Juicer.
A juicer could be a problem. A juicer could be a problem because that's exactly what a sifter is, right? It's sort of the juice falls down and the pulp stays up. That's a sieve. A juicer is a sieve. So don't use a juicer on Shabbat. But in any case, so there is that's a solution. That if you want to save the rest of your fruit, don't take out the rotten one. Take out the good ones with your hand, not using a vessel, and put them aside. But Eitan had a good idea. What did we say before? There's another way around this problem, where you could even take the rotten one. He said that, the problem is when you have a mixture, then you're not allowed to separate the bad from the good. But if you take the bowl of fruit now is a mixture. You have an apple, you have an orange, you have a banana, you have a plum, you have all sorts of fruit in there. Let's say you take your fruit bowl and you spill it out onto the counter, onto this table. Okay? The fruit are scattered all along the table. Is it a mixture anymore? No. You go over to where there is one rotten fruit and you pick it up. You're not separating it out from a mixture. You're just taking it from the table. Each fruit is separate. If you scatter it, it's not a mixture anymore. So you can do that. It's you don't like it, huh? It's too tricky, Josh?
Made for the right crowd.
Nah, too tricky. But what we said before is good enough, right? As long as you take the good from the bad with your hand and for use. It's not for keeping it for later. So then you're allowed to, and then when all you have left, if you've taken all the good fruit out, all you have left is the one moldy fruit. Of course, you can throw it in the garbage, clean out your basket, and then put everything back in the basket. There's no problem with creating mixtures. The problem is separating out from mixtures. And so there is but another option, I think Eitan's system does work, as long as you nullify the mixture. It's no longer a mixture. Each one is on its own part of the table. It's not all jumbled together. So then you can take each one, take the rotten fruit and put it in the garbage. That's all. You're not taking it out of a mixture. Yeah.
And if you take like the rotten apple and you take a bite of the good part of the apple, and then you say, okay, I can't eat anymore because the rest is rotten.
Sure.
You throw it away.
That's no problem. Yeah, sure. If you're taking the apple
just take a bite.
in order to be able to use it, so then you're not separating the bad from the good. You're going to take a bite that's good from the good. If you don't mind taking a bite of the apple, depends on how rotten it is. And you can cut off the good part. Cut off the good from the bad. You don't cut off the bad part. That's separating off the bad from the good. But if you cut off the good, you can take the good from the bad. A knife is not considered to be a vessel for selecting or separating. A knife is for cutting. That's a normal. That's like an extension of your hand, really.
How about smelling it? Is it considered using it? Because, for example,
do you enjoy this?
Orange has a smell.
If you enjoy it, if you're gonna enjoy smelling, I don't know. I think the smell.
It's easier. Then you don't have to take a bite or peel.
Right.
Try not to hide it.
If you're gonna really enjoy it, yeah. If the fruit is not totally rotten, there's something good that you can do with it. So then you're not selecting the bad from the good. You're selecting the good from the good. Or if you have a fruit bowl and all the fruits are healthy, and you say, oh, I want an orange. Oh, I want an apple. You can choose the apple. You can choose. There's no problem because you're separating good from good. But the act of separating is when it's sort of industrial. You're like setting up your produce for use, for later on use. So these are some of the biggest problem is...
How do you define bad? For example, some people don't like to eat onion or parsley. Some people really hate to eat them, so they want to separate it. Are they considered bad?
Yeah, it's actually quite individual. Was if you get you get served, you go to someone's house on Shabbat. Does that ever happen?
Yes.
You don't cook the food yourself. They cook it for you. They give you rice, and inside the rice there's some nuts, and there's some raisins, right? What else do you put into rice?
Mushroom.
Some mushrooms. Some what?
Peas.
Herbs, right? Also herbs. And you get your plate of rice that's mixed in with all these things, and you say, I hate mushrooms. I can't stand mushrooms. The rest looks pretty good. So during the other 6 days of the week, what are you going to do? Take the mushroom, maybe use your fork, use your spoon, whatever, and put it on the side. Take it and put it out, and then eat the rest of the rice.
Other people?
Even if there's other people, yeah. I would do that.
No, I take first the mushrooms and eat the flesh like this, and then the rice, and then I eat the...
You're a very well behaved boy. Eat things even that you don't like them.
Only at home I have
Let's say you're at home then. On Shabbat, you're not allowed to separate off the things that you don't like. So you're pulling them out of a mixture. The rice is a mixture. With all those nuts and the mushrooms, you can't pull out the mushrooms. What you have to do is eat the rice and leave the mushrooms for the last. You take the good from the bad. There's actually an expression I'll teach you in Hebrew. The 3 things to think about if you want to separate on Shabbat. It has to be ochel, meaning the good from the bad. Biyad, using your hand, not a sifter, not a vessel. Umiyad. Ochel, bayad, umiyad. It's almost a rhyme. Miyad means immediate, for immediate use. It's not for, making things pretty and setting them on the shelf for later. Ochel, bayad, umiyad. Those are the 3 conditions to be aware of when you want to separate things off. So, for example, let's say you want to serve some oranges or nuts. Let's say you want to serve some peanuts to your guests. And where you live, it's really a delicacy to get the peanuts out of the shells. With no shells, right? In America, it's quite common. Yeah, they shell them for you in the factory, right?
In my country, most of it is with the shell.
In your country, it's mostly with the shell. So it's a very nice thing if you're the hostess or the host of the house, and you want to serve a bowl of peanuts. What do you want to do? You want to prepare it for your guests. So you want to take off all the shells. And then, after you take off the big shell, there's also the brown shell, which surrounds the peanuts also. And you want them to get only the nut itself. So can you, in the kitchen, before you serve the guests, can you crack open the nuts and separate off, once you've got the mixture of all these nuts and all the brown little thin papery type of things? The skin, the red skin or the brown skin, yeah.
Absolutely not.
Because you're separating off the bad from the good, right?
Yeah, no way.
That's borer. Well, if you think about our 3 conditions, it might be allowed.
No.
In a certain way. Take the good from the bad, ochel. So you have 2 things. You've got the peanut and you've got the husk. So instead of pulling away the husk, pull away the peanut. Take the good and you put it in a bowl with only peanuts. Take another one, you take away the peanut. And then you do it with your hands. You don't do it with any...
Take out the
No way.
Take out the peanut. Ochel, biyad, umiyad. Miyad means? Immediate. So you can't do it Friday night because you want to serve the peanuts the next day. But if you want to serve the peanuts at Kiddush, 10 o'clock, so by 9 o'clock, you can already, that's considered miyad, or it depends on the circumstances. But as long as it's for immediate use, it's not for, I'm preparing for hours later. Three conditions. Ochel, if you separate out the good stuff from the bad, and you do only use it with your hands, not with using a utensil like a sifter. And miyad, it's for immediate use. You're allowed to, I'll give you another example. You want to serve some melon. Do you ever eat melon? Not watermelon, melon. And what does it have in the, you open it up, what does it have in the middle? Seeds. You serve the watermelon with the melon with the seeds? The cantaloupe. With the seeds? No, what do you have to do? Scoop out the seeds. Can you do that on Shabbat? Many times we serve for a first course, sometimes we have fruit, sometimes we serve melon. How does my wife prepare it?
For Shabbat.
To cut it first.
Before Shabbat, it won't be as fresh.
As a non-Jew.
No, she doesn't.
She buys it.
No.
To cut it first.
Follow the rules.
And then separate.
Ochel bayad umiyad. She's not using a sifter, so there's no special vessel. She just uses. So taking the bad from the good is the biggest problem here. Right, because usually you scoop out the seeds, which is the bad. So you're taking the bad from the good. So it's a problem. So if you cut it, then you can sort of pull away the slice from the seeds inside.
Or
So-
you can,
or-
just as Aidan said, you take it and eat and split it out. Does it
But
work?
when you're serving other people, you don't want it to go through their mouth. I don't think you want the kitchen person to be eating your food and swallowing it. Not such a good idea. So you have to, yeah.
Right. I mean, you cut this part. You cut this part and I don't know.
Yeah, it's tricky. So I'll tell you, there is another example which will make it clear that perhaps this type of separating, of taking out the seeds when you're about to eat the melon is allowed, if it's right before. You have to prepare it right before the food for it to be miyad. So we have biyad or miyad. The problem is the ochel part. So how do we deal with that? So sometimes you don't actually have to take the food out of the waste. Why? That's one of the conditions. For example, you have an orange. Are you allowed to eat the orange on Shabbat? What happens when you peel the orange? You're taking away the peel. That's the bad things. That's the bad from the good. It doesn't fit our conditions for permitted separating. The answer is because that's the normal way of eating the fruit. It's allowed. It's the normal way of eating the fruit. So right before you eat the orange, you're allowed to peel the orange. You take off the peel. You do it with your hands. You know, there could be another solution. The rabbis could have said, the only way to eat an orange on Shabbat is to cut it open and scoop out the inside. But they don't say that, because that's not the normal way of eating an orange. Most people, they peel an orange. Same thing with an egg, a boiled egg. Yesterday we dealt with cooking. It's cooked from before Shabbat, okay? Your egg is boiled from before Shabbat. What is it? What's the problem? You have the egg now, you want to eat it? You've got to peel, the egg peel. So the rabbis could have said, sorry, we can't separate the peel from the egg. That's taking off the bad from the good. You should have to cut the egg in half and scoop out the insides, so you take the good from the bad and say, no, that's not the normal way of eating. So the process of separating, which is forbidden here in chapter 11, is the industrial kind. And sometimes the foods lend themselves that's the only way, is that you take off the bad in order to eat the good. Like you take off the peel. So regarding melon, I think they say that's the deal. That's the normal way of eating a melon, is that you scoop out the seeds. And if you do it right before the meal, without using any special sifter, then it's allowed. You can prepare the melon for the meal by taking out you scoop out the seeds. That's like peeling an orange or taking the peel off of an egg. Yeah.
I think some Germans who like to eat egg with a small spoon, just cut
Soft boiled usually.
Small spoon,
Yeah.
add some salt, and I think it's
Sure, it is. It is. It could be possible, but the rabbis say that it's also okay if you have if you just peel off the shell right before eating. It's fine. But it's problematic. It's according to our rules, you've got to have 3. Take a look on page 207. 207. You see 1, 2, 3 at the bottom? Aaron, will you read it for us?
One must pick out the ochet and not the solid.
Actually, read the first paragraph before that. There are 3 conditions.
There are 3 conditions that must be met in order for an act of separating to be deemed permissible as derech achila, rather than prohibited as derech melacha.
So you see, those are the categories that we didn't use those words. There's separating in the manner of work, melacha, and then there's separating, which is derech achila, means part of the act of eating. It's part of the act of eating. Okay, go ahead. What are the 3 conditions?
One must pick out the ochet and not the solid, because this is the way one normally eats. However, if one removes the solid from the ochet, this is considered derech melacha. 2. One must take the food with his hand the way one does when eating, and not with an implement designed for straining or separating. 3. The preparation must take place just before consumption. If the separating is done long before the eating, this is considered derech melacha.
Okay, very good, very good. So we learned the basic principles of separating, and take a look on page 211. Let me give you a classic situation. You're being served your soup, and you call over the waiter and you say, "Waiter, there's a fly in my soup." The problem is it's Shabbat. You can't pick out the fly and throw it away, because that's separating the bad from the good. What are the solutions?
Pretend you're eating a fly and drop on the floor. Whoops.
Tricky. Get a new bowl. What do you say?
Take a spoon with soup and a fly and
Where did you learn that?
I just thinking.
You're thinking of it. Very interesting. What Eitan's suggesting is something very tricky. He's saying, don't separate only the bad. Separate some of the good with the bad. Take some soup together with the fly. That you're allowed to take. You're allowed to take a chunk of good and bad. Like I said, you're allowed to take the apple that's half rotten and eat the half. So you take a spoon, you pick up the fly, but together with the fly, you take a little bit of soup. And that you'll throw away. And that way you're not just separating the bad from the good. That's another solution. Another solution is, the simplest is, let's say you're in the kitchen. It's not or let's say you're in the kitchen, you've got a pot of soup, and someone likes only the broth, not the vegetables and not the onions and not the other stuff that's in it. So what do? You can take a ladle and select the broth. Just take from the pot only what you want. That's the good from the bad. The vegetables are not bad, but for this person they're bad. And so you have to take the bad from the next person. He wants vegetables. Only vegetables. Well, for him, as long as you don't use a strainer, you have to be careful. Some people actually have these slotted spoons. You know what I mean? A spoon that has slots in it. Can't use that on Shabbat because that's a vessel which is designed for separating. That's what it's for, to let all the juice go out and you get just what you want. Like if you're serving, if you're taking some carrots, and sometimes the carrots are in a sauce, and you just want the carrots, so they give you a slotted spoon. You're using a spoon to separate off the carrots from the juice. People don't like the juice of carrots usually, right? You can't use that on Shabbat. It's a problem. So separating the good from the bad is allowed. Yeah.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
What if we cook a fish, the fish together the bone?
Oh, very good question. It's an especially good question because there's a tradition that you should have fish on Shabbat to honor the Shabbat with fish.
Gefilte fish.
Gefilte fish is a very Jewish custom. And you know why? Many people say it's because of Stephen's question. Gefilte fish was designed, created, so that you could have fish on Shabbat that has no bones on it. What is gefilte fish? It's fish that was processed, it was grated and chopped and turned into a patty. And so there's no bones in it. So gefilte fish is perfect for Shabbat. There's no bones to separate. Some people say that's really where the tradition of eating gefilte fish came from, because of Stephen's question. But we all know that you don't have to have gefilte fish. And many people eat other kinds of fish that does have bones in it. What do you do? It's a very, very serious question. Because we take our oneg Shabbat very seriously. Oneg? What's oneg? Enjoyment, delight. We take our delight in Shabbat. It's a big mitzvah. If you like fish, you should have fish for Shabbat, to honor the Shabbat. Have you heard of the story of Yosef Mokir Shabbat? This is a classic children's story. It appears in our sources, not only for children. It's a story about teaching you how to honor the Shabbat. How important it is to buy fish, especially for Shabbat. Every week, Yosef would go to the market and buy a delicious fish for Shabbat. One week he went to the market and all the fish was gone. It had all been taken up. There was no fish for Shabbat. He was so sad. I won't have fish for Shabbat. I want to honor the Shabbat by having fish. So he was really walking home sad. And he didn't know what to do. I'm trying to remember the story precisely. Finally, he saw one merchant which had a big, delicious fish. And he said, I want to buy the fish from you for Shabbos. And he said, it's very expensive. It's very, very expensive. You can't afford it. So, oh no, but I need it for Shabbat. My Shabbat will not be enjoyable without the fish. He said, any price, you name your price. For the sake of Shabbat, I'm willing to spend much more than the market value. And he goes ahead and he says, $1 million. Yosef goes home and he sells his car and he sells his business and he gets the $1 million and he goes and buys the fish for Shabbat. He takes it home. Delicious. Baruch Hashem. What a Jew. What a Jew. He's so willing to give. But that's not the end of the story. The problem is, now he's broke. Now Yosef doesn't have any food to eat. And he doesn't have any wood to burn to keep himself warm in the winter. And he's poor and destitute. And so he becomes a beggar. And he doesn't have, he tries to get any job that he can. And he makes ends meet, he gets by. But then, it's Friday again next week. And now, he doesn't have any properties to sell. He doesn't have any, so he goes to the market and there's plenty of fish, but he doesn't have any money to buy the fish. He doesn't know what to do, and so he goes to the river and he says, I can't buy fish, but maybe Hashem will help me catch a fish. And the story, we have to zoom out of Yosef. So he's sitting there Friday trying to catch a fish for Shabbat. Down the river, unbeknownst to Yosef, the king was going for a ride. What do you call a ride on the river? What do you call it?
You?
He was going, but in English there's a word for boating.
Wow.
Boating on the river. He was on his boat. He was having a nice time, and he was taking off his crown because it was getting a little hot, and he was showing the people he was with, see, this is the crown jewel. It's in my crown, the most expensive jewel in the entire kingdom. And wouldn't you know, a bird comes by and startles him and knocks the stone out of the crown, and plunk, it falls into the river. Oh no, the king is beside himself. My crown jewel has been lost forever, and they dive and they dive. They can't find it. You know why they can't find it? A fish came by and swallowed it up.
Big fish.
A big fish, a small fish, I don't know, but a fish swallowed up the crown jewel. Now we go back to Yosef, who's sitting on the riverside, praying to Hashem, I just wanted to honor your Shabbat by getting the fish for Shabbat. And now I don't have any money to buy any fish. I'm fishing. Maybe you'll give me some fish for Shabbat. And lo and behold, he catches a fish. He's so excited, he catches the fish. He goes home and he tells his wife, you see, Hashem provided for us. They cut open the fish, they find a jewel. And they get to buy back their car and buy back their company and their business, and they're richer than they ever were before. From here we learn how important it is to honor the Shabbat. His name is Yosef. He became known as Yosef, the one who honors Shabbat. Mokir, like Yakar, is precious. Yosef Mokir Shabbat. He was rewarded by Hashem for his efforts of finding fish for Shabbat. So Stephen, you don't know how such a good question you asked. Because having fish for Shabbat is so important. It's the classic way we honor the Shabbat. Personally, I'm not a big fan of fish. So we don't have a lot. My wife likes fish, so she does cook fish when we have guests. No, in the shape of cookies, maybe, if it's not made out of fish. Sometimes I eat fish, but in any case, how can you eat fish on Shabbat? When you're eating the fish, many times you've got to pull out the bones. So turn to page 216. I think you know the answer already, because I talked to you about taking the seeds out of the melon and peeling off the peel off the egg and peeling off the peel of the orange. That if that's the normal way of eating them, then that's allowed.
But it's not for immediate
Is it not for immediate?
cooking.
You have to cook it before Shabbat. You can't cook it on Shabbat. So if you separate it before Shabbat, there's no problem. The only problem is separating on Shabbat.
Yes, on Shabbat.
So sometimes you cook it with the bones.
Yes.
And then you put it on your plate and you've got bones. So what do? So as you can see in the bottom, page 216, some are stringent and maintain that removing bones from fish or meat is prohibited because they're removing psolet from ochel. That's the waste from the good stuff. in their opinion, one must remove the food from the bones. In other words, with your fork, separate off the food, or with your hands, take the food off of the bone, not to pull the bones out from the fish. Some people say you have to do that. However, there is a lenient position. Namely, that when one eats, he may remove the bones from the fish or meat, as this is the normal way to eat them. You see that in the footnote, there's 3 different reasons why. 3 factors which allow you to do that. Some people say that the bones are attached to the fish. The fish is attached to the bones. So it's not considered to be a separate pasolet that you're removing. Because there's different, you could see in the footnote afterwards. But the bottom line is, as he says at the top of page 216, when eating fish with bones, one may remove the bones in the course of eating. In other words, one may begin eating the fish, and when he gets to the bones that are in his way, he may remove them with his hand or fork and continue eating. The same applies to meat with bones. Right? For a small child, one may remove the bones from the fish or meat before the child starts to eat, as this is the normal way of feeding children. Derech achila is permitted. If it's the manner of eating, it's permitted. But if it's the manner of melacha, of getting it ready for afterwards, separating it, then it's prohibited. In general, it's usually not so hard to cut off the good from the bad. Some people, when they eat chicken, they say it's not so healthy to eat the skin. In my opinion, it's the yummiest part. It's tasty, the skin. Some people say it's not healthy. I'm going to take off the skin. So you get your piece of chicken and it has the skin on it. Can you remove the skin? No, that's taking the psolet, the waste, and separating it off from the chicken. You can take the chicken away take the good things away from the bad. But not just to remove the psolet first. Okay, what other examples are there here? We're gonna finish up for today. A lot of people make this mistake.
What about tea? You have
Yeah.
the tea, but without the bags. So you put it
Right.
in the cup and then you mix it, but you separate the good from the bad first.
So if you leave the tea leaves in the bottom of the cup and you drink from the top, the good parts, you're doing everything right. You're doing it for immediate use. You're not using a strainer, and you're taking the good from the bad. Question is, can you remove the tea leaves after they've, been cooked up in a kli shlishi? Remember yesterday's class we talked about cooking on Shabbat may be a problem. But let's say you use kli shlishi and you rely on that you can put your tea. Most people nowadays have tea bags. You have a tea bag. So the tea is in the bag, it's already separate. What some people do is when I don't have any tea bags here, when you take the tea out after it's been steeped for a minute or 2 or a few seconds, however long, 3 minutes, you take out the bag and you hold it. There's usually a little string, right? Yes. You hold the tea bag and you hold it above the cup so that the remaining drops fall into the tea, because that's good tea. You want to be able to eat them. That is straining on Shabbat. You're using the vessel. The vessel is the tea bag. The bag is a strainer, essentially, is what it is. And you're using it to separate off the leaves from the good liquid, which you're letting drop down. So you're not allowed to do that. When you take out the tea bag on Shabbat, you remove it quickly with the liquid, not letting it hang so that the few drops drop out. Or you can use a spoon, take it out with a spoon, then you have a little bit of food together with the waste. But you have to be careful not to strain your tea in the tea bag on Shabbat. Definitely, some people, what they do? They squeeze the tea bag so that all the remaining amount of liquid comes out of it. That's probably a big prohibition on Shabbat. Because you're doing exactly what's not allowed. You're using a strainer to squeeze out the good from the bad, and you're taking out the bad. So you have to be careful with tea bags. We'll have to stop here for today. B'ezrat Hashem, we'll move on.
תודה רבה.
בבקשה.